Hello, fellow Rebel Capitals. Hope you're well. So, as most of you know from watching my videos, Klaus Schwab, the leader of the Malthusian cult, or what I call the World Economic Forum, retired about a month ago. A lot of questions surrounding the retirement. Why? This has been his life's work. Isn't he going to see it through to the end? I mean, the Malthusians want to depopulate the earth. They want to bring on global Marxism. That takes a lot of work. So why quit now? Especially all the success that you had during the cerveza sickness or the plan. Well, I shouldn't say it here on YouTube. The plan. You know what I'm going to say. We'll keep it YouTube friendly. You guys know where I'm going with that. Let's get right over to this article from, believe it or not, the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal calling out Klaus Schwab. Says internal staff use the N-word. Crazy. You know, this is always how it works, isn't it? The guys that come out and sit there and shake their finger at you and say that we need to be more fair and we can't discriminate and we've got to treat women well. They're always the people that are perpetrating the crimes. It's just like the Catholic priests. They're the ones always coming out and trying to forgive you for your sins or whatever. And they're the ones committing the most sin. It always works that way. So let's get right over here to, again, the Wall Street Journal. This isn't coming out on Zero Hedge or something like that. And this is an opinion piece from a guy named James Freeman, who really breaks it down. I really was impressed by this entire article. So let's just start right off by reading it. Now, here's a shocker. The highly credentialed and highly compensated nonprofit executive who tells businesses to stop focusing on the needs of shareholders doesn't seem to be a very nice boss. In fact, he may treat his employees even worse than he wants businesses to treat their owners, in other words, their shareholders, and customers. Well said. Well said. Let's give, what was his name, James? Yes, James. Let's give him a golf clap there. Bravo, James. So far, so good. The event is sometimes he's talking about Davos, is sometimes cast as a gathering of world capitalism. More precisely, it's an annual opportunity for global politicians and activists to persuade American CEOs to stop being capitalists. I love how he puts it. This is a fantastic article. Mr. Schwab's regular shtick is to tell CEOs that people have lost trust in large institutions like theirs, ironically enough. Then he tells them that to help rebuild such trust, they must stop focusing on the needs of shareholders and instead serve a larger universe of stakeholders like him, who may have no stake in the business, but do have strong opinions about climate change and diversity. Calling a spade right there. And remember, let's go 6 months back, where I was talking about the World Economic Forum having literally the worst brand in the world right now. Like, who has a better or who has a worse? This was at the time Bud Light. And I was arguing that, look, I think the World Economic Forum has more negative PR than Bud Light. Like, who would attach their name to the World Economic Forum? Why are all these leaders and politicians going there? There has to be something up. Like Klaus has some dirt on all of them, or who knows what's going on with the whole Epstein and Gates and Clinton and all that nonsense. But now it's starting to come out. And it's interesting to see the mainstream media start to turn on the World Economic Forum. It goes back to what we've been talking about on this channel quite frequently, where it's bad news is good news, but then all of a sudden the bad news becomes so obvious that the mainstream media can no longer push that BS narrative, and they have to admit the truth. And it seems like the exact same thing is playing out right now, hopefully, with the World Economic Forum. James goes on to write, the journal's Shalini Ramachandran. These are Indian names. There's no way I'm going to get them right. And another person named Khadija report on what happened a few years ago when Schwab decided his organization needed a youthful makeover. I singled out a group of employees over the age of 50 years old and instructed his HR chief to get rid of them all. Get rid of them all. These old hags are getting their way past their SMV. They've hit the wall. They need to get out of here. I don't even want to sexually harass them. They are so butt ugly. Oh, they said, according to people familiar with the matter, this, he explained, would lower the average age of the workforce. The HR chief, a seasoned former World Bank executive named Paolo Gallo, declined. He pointed out that there has to be reasonable explanation for firing someone outside of just their age, such as poor performance. Not long after, Schwab fired Gallo. Now, here they go into some, and again, these are complete allegations, but now, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, you guys know the saying, but I'll let you draw your own conclusions. So they talk about the story of Schwab hiring this gal to run this new initiative for startups. And then like 3 days later, he finds out that she's pregnant and he just completely goes nuts, which would be par for the course when you think about the fact that he's the leader of a Malthusian cult. And what do the Malthusians want? They want to depopulate the earth. So think about this conversation. How priceless would this be to be a fly on the wall in the office where the gal comes in and announces that she's pregnant and Klaus just loses it. Whoa, what? How could you do this? You know that we need to depopulate the earth and you're sitting there having kids? How dare you? How dare you? There's too many mouths to feed and not enough resources. You're just quoting Thanos from the Avengers movie. You're oh man, geez, to have a videotape of that. That would have been absolutely epic. So it says that he grew very upset, and he said that that she was not basically fit for the job anymore, and he ended up firing her. Which again, he's probably firing people for having kids because it's just so antithetical to his worldview. And he probably announces this all the time in the office, how people should never, ever have kids, how we need to kill 4 billion people ASAP. This is why we're trying to promote nuclear war, guys. If we're sitting here trying to promote nuclear war, you're not playing your part if you're out there having kids and getting pregnant, for heaven's sakes. You say, George, well, that's maybe just one isolated instance. No. At least 6 female staffers were pushed out or otherwise saw their careers suffer when they were pregnant, returning from maternity leave. Another half dozen described sexual harassment they experienced at the hands of senior managers, some of whom remain at the forum. 2 said they were sexually harassed years ago by VPs. Well, look, and we can only speculate, but it seems like sexual harassment is no problem just as long as you don't have kids. That's where they draw the line. That is, you sexually harass all the women you want, but as soon as you have a kid, hey, you're gondo. You're fired. You get the whole Donald Trump treatment. Oh, and 2 more recent incidents. Employees registered internal complaints after white forum managers used the N-word around black employees. Look, I'm all for free speech, and I think a lot of this is, I think we've gone way too far as far as being overly sensitive to certain words. But this is, I mean, come on now. In today's day and age, you've got to be pretty darn obtuse to use the N-word, for heaven's sakes, around Black employees. I mean, come on, dude. Have a little bit of not just respect, but just a little bit of self-awareness.
It's amazing how much the World Economic Forum pushes diversity as well.
Oh, yeah. It's just like I said at the beginning of this video, where, you know, excuse me, the people who always shout the loudest about certain things are usually the people that are the main perpetrators of whatever it is they're shouting about. It's just, you go, and it's not just with the World Economic Forum. It's like, if they sit there, the people who are shouting the most about climate change, I guarantee are the people who are polluting the most. The people that are shouting the most about discrimination are the people that are the most racist. It always works this way. Always works this way. So then they asked the World Economic Forum to comment, and Schwab declined an interview, shocker. And then Jan Zopef said in a statement that the article was basically a mischaracterization of our organization, culture, colleagues, including Schwab himself. Now, what I found interesting about this is that they actually responded to the article. You see, before, the World Economic Forum would never, ever respond to any of these allegations because they weren't by a respected media source, right? So if someone is out there on YouTube saying this, or Alex Jones or Russell Brand or Joe Rogan or something like that, they would never even acknowledge it. But we see that the tide is now changing. We see that the narrative is shifting quite substantially, to the point where if there's enough that is revealed, let's say, about the World Economic Forum, that the mainstream media will no longer protect them. They can't. And then they'll start coming after them. And if the mainstream media starts coming after them, then the World Economic Forum will have to respond. And then we'll probably get a lot of discovery, just like you would in a court case, where all these things start to come out of the cracks. They come out of the woodwork. And I think this is just the beginning. I think this is going to get a lot worse for the World Economic Forum. And hey, you reap what you sow. Let's just assume for a moment these allegations are false. Well, hey, at the end of the day, there's still Malthusians, in fact, Marxist Malthusians, that believe in eugenics, that want to depopulate the world. That in and of itself is enough for us to condemn the World Economic Forum and whatever the hell goes on in Davos. Yet now, and then they conclude with what I thought was really, yes, that's right. Now I remember why I highlighted this, because it talks about the hypocrisy and the nonsense that Klaus Schwab himself was spewing during the cerveza sickness. Whether or not one chooses to credit the denials from Mr. Schwab's organization, let's hope that his successor will react calmly to public health challenges and not seek to exploit them to advance political agendas. Well, I can assure you, whomever replaces Schwab will do the exact same thing, because he's going to be part of the Marxist Malthusian cult. And one thing, and not only are they Marxist, Malthusian, but they're also Machiavellian. So they're sitting there, bowing down to the statue of Machiavelli, and they're like, "Hey, whatever it takes to get the job done." Right? What is it? The ends or the end? No, the means. I'm getting it wrong here. You guys know the saying.
The ends always justify the means.
There you go. Thanks, Josh. Thank you for the assist there. When you're doing these live streams, sometimes you just have an instant lapse of memory. But they're all Machiavellian. So my point there was they're never going to let a crisis go to waste. They're never, ever, ever going to let a crisis go to waste. And I would argue there's good evidence that they're not only taking advantage of crises, but they're actually creating crises in order to leverage them to achieve their objectives and to further this worldview that they have of depopulation that is extremely anti-human. It's really at the core of this Malthusian belief system. So back in 2020, the author, James, reminds us that Schwab wrote, survey sickness lockdowns may be gradually easing. I'm sure he was pissed off about that. But anxiety about the world's social and economic prospects is only intensifying. There's good reason to worry a sharp economic downturn has already begun, and we could be facing the worst depression since the 1930s. While this outcome is likely, it's not unavoidable. To achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions, ironically with the working conditions. But this is just World Economic Code. It's just Klaus speak for saying he wants to push Marxism and he wants to push climate change. He wants to bring on a new world order, one government, one central bank digital currency, call it the IMF SDR, and that he wants the central planners to control the means of production. And he wants central planners to not only control the world, but to control every single person in the world as well. What they can do, what they can't do, what they can say, what they can believe in, and what they can spend their money on. They want not just a planned economy, they want a planned society. And although he can't come directly out and say it for obvious reasons, if you actually read between the lines with everything that he says and everything that they post on their website, it's easy to connect these dots. So then he concludes, of course, by saying we need a great reset of capitalism. No, you want a great reset of society where you are the person calling the shots. You can determine who is rich, who is poor. You determine quite literally, who dies and who lives. They're sociopaths. They're megalomaniacs at heart. There are many reasons to pursue a great reset, but the most urgent is the cerveza sickness. And again, of course, he was just saying this because he was trying to leverage the plan, you know what, to further achieve his goals. You just never let the crisis go to waste. I guess the question, the more overarching question, the more important question is, what is the next thing that they have got planned that they are trying or going to try to leverage with the new guy or gal, whomever is in charge? And, quite often the devil you know is a lot better than the devil you don't know. So we may sit there and look at Klaus Schwab and say, well, this guy is just pure evil. Be very careful, because the person that might replace him may be even more ambitious in regards to these Marxist Malthusian goals than Klaus was himself. But fortunately, their true colors are starting to be revealed by the mainstream media. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure that you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism, and don't use the N word, for heaven's sakes. We'll see you in the next video.